What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about some of the best LG phones that you can still buy in 2022. Honestly, these are some of the best phones that you can get as far as the value goes for the money or price to spec ratio. So let's go ahead and get started. My favorite phone on this list, of course, is the LG V60. We've made so many videos about this phone, and I will continue to until I see that this phone does not offer value. So this phone is just awesome. You can find it for well under 300 bucks, very cheap. Also, this phone has dual screen case capability. You can add an extra roughly 100 bucks on eBay. We'll get you a dual screen case for true multitasking. It just makes everything really awesome. It's really built like a tank. It just feels extremely solid in the hand. It's IP68 dust and water resistant as well too. So overall, just a very nice feeling phone. It also is a pretty big display at 6.8 inches, and it is a POLED HDR10 Plus display. So when you're watching YouTube, Netflix, everything looks really good on this panel. It's 1080p, 395 for the PPI. So what's really awesome about the V60 is that it actually got the Android 12 update that LG promised. And if we keep our fingers crossed, this phone will still potentially get Android 13. So I'm very excited about that. So we'll be looking forward to that for next year. But very excited. If you haven't seen my Android 12 video, check that out. This phone is still extremely powerful. The Snapdragon 865 is on board with the Adreno 650 on here. Basically, you can get top-notch performance with any game that you play. You can pretty much play any game on high settings still. It has micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 8 gigs of RAM. And that is for the base model. And then you have amazing sounding stereo speakers on here, very loud, very good bass quality. And on top of that, for audiophiles, you do have a headphone jack with a quad DAC in it. So if you have a good pair of headphones, this makes a excellent, music listening phone, or even if you're just playing games or whatever. So you do have NFC under the display. Fingerprint sensor is excellent on here, and also this phone does have some pretty good cameras. It's a 64 megapixel standard and a 13 megapixel ultra wide. You also have a 0.3 depth sensor with 8K video at 30 frames, and then 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 30. So basically, I think the shots still look really good on this phone. I think you get really nice natural colors, good detail. Ultra wide is pretty solid, and yeah, you get just great video too. So I really like the cameras on here. I still think they look really good. One of the best things about the V60 is battery life. Is actually a 5,000 milliamp battery, and then you have wireless charging on here as well. This phone easily can get well over 6 hours or a full day's use. Very easy. So definitely check out the V60. All links will be down below. Next is the predecessor to the V60, the LG V50. So this kind of has a few unique things. You might prefer this over the V50, but me personally, like, I would only get this if you can get it much cheaper than the V60 because they're kind of close in price. So please keep that in mind. And I understand availability. I can't talk. Unavailability in different countries as well too. So this is also still a very good option. So the V50 is very cheap. It's much cheaper than the V60, easily under 200 bucks now. You can find it very easy under 200 bucks, but mostly I see them for, around 200 bucks, but you can find it for much cheaper. This has a beautiful design. I think still very classy design because there's no actual camera bump on the back of this phone. So yes, it's a very slippery phone, but man, is it still look really nice to me. You also have IP68 dust and water resistant on here. But yeah, great build quality on here. It's got a 6.4 inch POLED display, HDR10, and it actually has a better display than the V60. It has a 1440p display, so it does have a much higher resolution to watch content in 2K. And then you also have 538 for the PPI, so it is a very sharp and very nice looking panel on here. I've seen a couple comments let me know that this phone got Android 12 actually, so I was really happy about that. So if you got Android 12 on your V50, leave a comment down below. I've seen a few already. So this phone does have the Snapdragon 855 and the Adreno 640. I'm going to do another updated gaming test, but this phone does a fantastic job with gaming as well too. You can pretty much play at high settings, no problem. You also have micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. This phone also has stereo speakers on board as well too, with again the quad DAC, and then you have NFC in your physical fingerprint scanner, which is very fast on the back. So the V50 does have very good camera setup. It's a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel telephoto with 2x, and then you have a 60 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K 60. And then what's interesting with the front camera is actually two cameras, an 8 megapixel standard, and then you also have a 5 megapixel wide camera. So if you want to take like group selfies and stuff like that, this phone is really good at that. It shoots in 1080p 60 as well. So overall, the cameras again look very good detail. Very good color science. Overall, it's just a really good camera. I don't think anyone would complain about them. The battery life on here is pretty good as well too. You can easily get 6 hours on this one. 4,000 milliamp battery, 18-watt charging with wireless charging. So this is also a very good option and a very cheap option. All right, guys. Next is going to be the LG Velvet. And this is a really awesome phone with a very unique design as well too. I really just love the design on here. It's very beautiful. It's a very light, very thin phone. It's IP68 dust and water resistant as well too. It also has a POLED display at 6.8 inches. It's a very tall phone as well too. It's 1080p 395 for the PPI. Overall, it's a very good panel here as well too. And this phone does have the dual screen case capability, so you can go ahead and take advantage of that. This phone is upgradable to Android 12. It does have the Snapdragon 765 G chip on here and the Adreno 620, so it's not as powerful as the LG V60. So if you're like really into gaming, I would go with like, you know, the V60. But this phone is just pretty snappy and it's pretty powerful for casual gaming and stuff like that. I've never had an issue with performance on this phone actually. So you do have micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here. You also have stereo speakers on board too. Unfortunately, you do have the headphone jack, but there's no quad DAC on this phone, so do note that. The fingerprint scanner is under the display. It works fine. You also have pretty good cameras on here. It's a triple camera setup at 48 megapixel standard, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and then a 5 megapixel depth sensor. It also shoots in 4K 30 with a 16 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 1080p 30. Overall, I really like the image quality on here. You can see it's pretty good. Now, I got some questions. You know, do I think it is as good as the V60? No, I don't think it's as good, but the pictures are still pretty good. I don't think anybody would complain about them. If you're honestly choosing between this and the V60, I think I would pretty easily go with the V60. But this phone is really great if you like the design and you like the screen on this phone being a very, you know, thin and tall screen. I really like it. So this phone also has pretty good battery life, 4,300 milliamp battery, 25-watt charging, which is really nice. You also have wireless charging on board. This phone does a really good job with screen on time, so you can easily get, you know, 6 hours on this phone as well too. So I really like the LG Velvet. Definitely check this one out. All right, guys, next is the LG G8X. This is also another excellent phone as well too. And I really like the design on here. It's aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant as well. This one's a little bit smaller at 6.4 inches. It's still an OLED display with HDR10. It's 1080p 403 for the PPI. And build quality is really nice. Again, this has the dual screen case capability as well too. And this one was on LG's update list, so it should get Android 12. And it has the Snapdragon 855 on here, Adreno 640, micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. This phone also has the stereo speakers that are really nice, but this phone has the quad DAC as well too. And these phones typically are going for pretty cheap, so you can find these really cheap. Also, you do have all your bells and whistles as far as NFC, under the display fingerprint sensors on here. The image quality is pretty good on here. It's only a dual camera setup, so there's no telephoto lens. But it is 12 megapixel standard, 13 megapixel ultra wide, 4K 60 on the back, and then you have 4K 30 on the front. And there's a 32 megapixel selfie cam. And images come out really great dynamic range, great skin tones on here. Also, the ultra wide is pretty close to the main lens as far as quality. And I think anybody will be happy with the cameras on here. This phone also has a 4,000 milliamp battery, 21 watt fast charging with wireless charging as well too. So overall, it's a great package to definitely consider. So if you see this phone for a great price, then definitely pick this one up. All right, last is the LG Wing. I haven't gotten this phone yet, but I've always looked at it. I've been waiting for the price to come down to somewhere where I'm kind of comfortable with it. But yeah, I'm gonna be getting one soon. But this is for people who are really into the whole, dual screen, the sort of flipping thing that this phone does. And it really is very niche. So, like I said, you really have to like this idea of like the phone flipping and stuff like that. But it is a premium design on here. It's IP54 splash proof on here. It has again that rotating POLED display at 6.8 inches. It's 1080p 395. And then the secondary display is a 3.9 inch display. It's 1080p and it's a GOLED display is what they call it. And yeah, so if you really like that idea of having dual displays without having the dual screen case, that's essentially what this is doing here. This phone, it does have the Snapdragon 765G Adreno 620 on here, so it's not as powerful as something like the LG V60. So like I said, for gamers, you go with the V60. If you want like this as far as like the flippy mechanism, then definitely that should be top priority for you. It does have micro SD cards that support 128 gigs of internal storage, 8 gigs of RAM on here. You do have a speaker on here, no dual speakers, which is unfortunately, and also no headphone jack on here as well too. Bells and whistles are on here under the display fingerprint sensor NFC. You do have a triple camera setup, 64 megapixel standard, 13 megapixel ultra wide, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and then you have 4K 60, and then a pop-up selfie cam that's 32 megapixels. And I think that's pretty interesting because this phone does not have any type of notch or punch hole, which I think is also another selling point if you really hate those type of screen designs. Also, you have 4,000 milliamp battery with fast charging and wireless charging. So definitely consider these phones, guys, and I will catch you guys in the next video.